One of the great all-time Rockies and his lovely wife, Matt and Leslee Holliday.
How did you adapt to being a mom of all these athletes?
With families, it's important to have a couple non-negotiables.
From a dad's perspective, what were those conversations with Jackson?
Trying to figure out the major leagues for the first time with all this attention.
How do y'all navigate Sundays?
I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I don't think you do.
Yeah, I would.
How did y'all make it a priority to make sure you kept family time?
I would just say something that we think is really important as a couple.
Are they as excited about your pickleball career as they were your football career? I mean, are they seeing kind of the potential there maybe?
Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I am Jeff along with Brad, and we're excited today because we're doing this without Britt.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to get him out of the picture.
Yeah, like the dad's out of town.
Yeah,
the
he's
kids can have
texting us
fun
to make sure we're doing, but he is actually taking a father-son trip to Denver to watch the Braves play the Rockies. And so hopefully they have a good time. But with that, it's kind of interesting that they're there because today on the podcast, we have one of the great all-time Rockies and his lovely wife, Matt and Leslee Holliday. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for letting us come on with you guys.
So first we'll ask what have y'all been up to? Obviously we'll get into Jackson and his whole deal, but what are the dynamics of your other kids, and kind of just give our listeners an overview of y'all's life right now?
Well, I think so Ethan, our 17-year-old, just finished his junior year in high school, and he's into baseball as well. And so this summer, the summer before the senior year is kind of the big summer where he's scouted heavily for next year's draft. So we've spent a lot of the summer out on the travel ball sort of scene with that. Right now he's in Panama with the USA Baseball 18U team. So we're not obviously in Panama, we're in Oklahoma, but we've been all over the Southeast for the most part this summer, and we've been up to see Jackson a few times in Boston and Baltimore, and I went and saw him in Memphis. We've been to Norfolk. We
haven't been home hardly at all.
I think
I was going to say
about 7 or 8 days all summer. So we've been watching a lot of baseball.
Loving that.
Yeah. We have a 14-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. And so they've kind of taken the brunt of the travel. We try to make it as fun for them as possible and do some things that they like to do. But it's been, that can be a little bit challenging, finding those kind of things. But so we've been traveling. And watching baseball and actually we're leaving this afternoon to go to Tampa and watch the Orioles and Rays this weekend. And then school's about to start back up. And so the younger two kids are excited about school. And so that's kind of where we're at.
So you were at Atlanta, I guess, at Lake Point probably for Ethan. And is that how you met Britt? I think was there a connection on the pickleball court? Is that what I understand?
Yeah. So we go to Atlanta a lot, obviously with Jackson and Ethan. I feel like, a couple of those tournaments.
We created community.
Yeah. A couple of those tournaments, you get to go super south, and then you might have a game all the way north. And so we've traveled up and down South Atlanta all the way to North Atlanta, and we've met people along the way. And I think Gary Niebuhr is the guy, is a man that I met that knows Britt. And so I'm always looking for pickleball games. And it's been cool because my wife would tell you that I used to be an introvert, and she thinks pickleball has created an extrovert in me out of nowhere. And so I play pickleball with random people, but then I start to build community, and I know this guy, and he can set me up with this guy, and he's got players that can play. I can't play today, but you can play with this guy. So I all of a sudden have created this network of people around the country that I know that are pretty good at pickleball that gets my fix in wherever we go. So that's how I met Britt, was through a friend, and then we were talking, and then obviously Jeff, and so so basically that's how I met Britt.
I was telling Brad the story earlier. I said, I remember you talk about your work ethic, and I'm sure you've passed on to your kids, but for people to listen, me and Matt got to play in the World Baseball Classic in 06 together. And I remember we'd come in after practice and everybody would be like, eating dinner or sitting there doing whatever. And dude, you'd be in the weight room with like 130-pound dumbbells just going to town. And I remember thinking, God, I need to work a little harder. I think I'm not doing what I need to be doing.
Cheeseburger and
Yeah, exactly. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I tell people about that team all the time. I mean, when you look back at that team, we were kind of like the young bucks that were like,
oh,
I'm not even sure how we ended up on the team. And then, we had like Ken Griffey Jr. and Derek Jeter and Chipper. And I mean, the cast of baseball players on that, Roger Clemens, like just Hall of Famers at every stop. And then there was like me and you.
Well, and think about this. We want to think about how young we were. Al Leiter was on that team. You remember that?
Yeah,
we played with Al Leiter. I'm like, how did this happen?
Roger Clemens and Al Leiter. I mean,
yep.
There was, and then, me, you, and Vernon Wells. And like, I felt like we were kind of like the guys, like,
we hung out together and we're like, all right, well,
we'll sit on the bench together. It was, but it was that was pretty awesome.
Your two youngest ones, what sports do they play? Do they play?
Yeah, Grayson, she is a cheerleader, and so she tumbles and she cares a lot about that. But you know what? She's really a good rider, and so I tell her that all the time. And I think the thing about having a daughter mixed in with all these boys, and then obviously Matt playing baseball for so long, I've always prayed, like, Lord, show me the things that she's really passionate about so I can make those things a really big deal. And so she's incredibly athletic. I mean, she's probably the most competitive kid we have. I mean, you play wiffle ball with her, forget about it. She's, but she just hasn't really had an opportunity, to be completely honest with you, because of all the moving around we've done and the boys doing their things, to play a team sport. And so she tumbles, and then she'll try out for cheerleader, and then she does the competitive cheer team. And then the little guy, Reed, he's into everything. And so, he's amazing at Fortnite. He's he is a really good baseball player. He loves football. He plays basketball. And so he's so young. I mean, we just let him do whatever he wants to do. And hopefully he finds something that he's really passionate about, and we'll support him in whatever that may be.
Well, you talk about travel ball. That's one thing, but competitive cheer, those parents are crazy,
We've been there.
Aren't they?
We've been there.
Yeah, and it's wildly expensive for the return. You pay.
I remember we went to the first event, and it was like $50 to get in, and then they did like a minute and a half.
Yep, you get about 3 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
Wow, that was
My boys still talk about having to sit through those 3-hour cheer competitions for their sisters to see them for 3 minutes. And I mean, gosh, we go to Disney every once in a while to make it kind of, a payoff, to kind of where they get out those competitions. Yeah, it's tough. Well, we'll talk a lot about Matt here, but Leslee, tell us about your story growing up. I think you grew up in Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, I grew up on a ranch in Texas. And so my dad was a rancher. My granddad was a rancher. It was a little town called Higgins, Texas. Super, super small, 300 people.
It's the smallest
town you've ever met.
Wow.
And then we lived outside of that.
They don't even have a school anymore. Like it went from like super small to barely existing.
Yeah. But we lived there. We loved it. And so I have 2 younger brothers. I love my parents, Steve and Janice. They're a lot of fun. And I had a great childhood growing up. And we moved to Oklahoma when I was in the 7th grade, and grew up there, and then ended up going to Oklahoma State. But yeah, I had a lot of fun hanging out with my brothers and my dad, riding horses, and just being a kid in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Were you a runner? Did you run?
Not competitively. After I had Jackson, I started to run a lot. It's weird what happens when you have kids. You're like, it's like escapist mentality or something. So I started running then.
Awesome. So, like, how did you adapt to being a mom of all these athletes? I mean, is it easy for you, or are you kind of like, you guys play off each other in the sense that that Matt's, serious about it and you're kind of somebody they can come to you to talk about other stuff with, or are you competitive as well in terms of your kids' journeys?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, my brothers were both really good athletes, and I was always athletic, so that was part of my growing up. Being outside, and we were just never inside kids. We were always outside doing something physical, and so that was a very easy way to want to raise my kids raise our kids when we got married. It's like, I just want them to be outside. I want them to be doing something that they enjoy. And as long as I can remember, I'm sure you feel the same way. Jackson was just always interested in baseball. And so, and it worked out great because Matt played. And so, but I'm talking like very young, and he would want to hit and catch and talk about it and watch the games. And like, we lived in Austin, Texas, when he was a little boy, and the University of Texas, they won the national championship that year when he was little. And he would just want to watch that highlight video all the time. He didn't want to watch, like Cars or whatever movie was out. He's like, I want to watch that. I want to watch that. And he'd hold his hands up and do the whole thing. And so he just was always very drawn to the sport. And so that made it easy for me, because as a parent, I think it's our responsibility to pray and ask the Lord for discernment, and whatever your kids are passionate about, like, hey, let's move into that lane. And so that's what we did with him. And then we had another one, and he was the same way. And so it just became very natural. And then my daughter, when she was born, she wanted to be outside and she wanted to play. So it just that's kind of what we did. And so as they began to play travel ball and they began to get more serious about it, as you know, Jeff, y'all are gone all the time. Matt played for 15 years in the major leagues. And so I probably took him to the majority of their games and all the things. And I'm not one to, Matt would tell me all the time, like, don't let any of the coaches mess with his swing, and FaceTime me every at bat. So that's kind of what we did, and I've never been one to give advice. I remember even when Matt played, it was fascinating. You would watch, different, like, I hate to say this, but like marriages, like sometimes you'd see a wife try to give her husband, tips. And I always thought, what a strange thing, So I've just never been the personality to act like I knew about something that I just didn't know anything about. So I was more of an encourager, professional encourager, I would say.
Well, I know this. John Smoltz told me that the best swing on the 2010 Cardinals was a 5-year-old Jackson Holliday. He said he remembered in the clubhouse, and he'd have that leg kick and he's like, he had the best swing out of any guy on the Cardinals that year at 5 years old.
I remember early on, when I was actually with the Rockies, I was pitching to him in the basement of a rental that we were renting, and I was probably not doing great. I had a slump, and I remember pitching to him, watching him, thinking, "My gosh, I would trade my swing for his right now." And he was, 4.
No, younger than that.
3 or 4 years old, and I was thinking, I was watching his thinking, yeah, he's really like his body listening. Like, I'm watching him thinking, my gosh, if I could get in those positions, like, I'll probably be in a way better spot. So he's always had, like, he would load, and like his body, and he would move in ways where I was like, that's, I would never even adjust that. Like, that was pretty natural that young. But yeah, he, from an early age, he just, and I always encouraged, like, I never wanted to talk to him about mechanics. Like, hey, let's just hit it here. Like, give him, like, okay, hit it over here. Now hit it over this way. Because I always was, I'm sure like you, Jeff, I always was thinking about mechanics. Like, I probably thought about mechanics way too much, where I wanted the boys to be as natural as possible, because the mechanic thought and mechanic brain can be, I used to try in the minor leagues. I remember whoever that had a good night the night before in the major leagues, I was trying that in the cage the next day. So I didn't want them to ride the mechanic roller coaster that I rode for much of my career.
And I think going back, you probably think now too, and even watching Jackson, right, the first month, a lot of it comes down to pitch selection, man. If you're not swinging at something you can handle, you're not going to have success. And so we talk about mechanics, but a lot of time it's getting a good pitch to hit. So, and we'll get back to him, but I want to dig down your road for a minute, Matt, for you growing up, because we talk a lot about on here, man. We preach at least until high school, like multi-sport athletes, playing as many sports as you can, having that ability. So kind of talk to us about your childhood.
Yeah. So I grew up here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. My dad was actually he coached here, but my dad played football and baseball and basketball in high school. He actually had football offers, D1 football offers, but he loved baseball. Ended up going to JUCO to play baseball. Wound up at University of Miami, played baseball at Miami, and then from there played a couple years in minor leagues, and then got into coaching Arizona State, and then ended up back at Oklahoma State coaching baseball. So my dad was a multi-sport, loved baseball, basketball, and football. So he always encouraged me and my brother to play all the sports, and I loved the seasonal change. I loved whatever sport was next. I loved to compete. So when baseball season was over, I couldn't wait for football and whatever was next. And then when football was over, like it bled right into basketball. I was jumping out into basketball season and then right into baseball. So I played all three sports right up until my senior year in high school, and ended up not playing basketball my senior year in high school, which I regret all the time because I love basketball. I still play pickup basketball. And so I love the competition. I love the different sports. I love the newness, the freshness of a new sport coming. I realize nowadays, like a lot of the coaches are encouraging, hey, you got to get this many practice hours. And if you want to be, if you want to play baseball in our program or you want to play football in our program, then you're going to be, you need to be here in the off season. You need to be this and that. And this is, and it's so definitive. And like the only way is to really focus on one sport. And I'm with you guys. Like, I think that I learned a lot. I think it was beneficial to my athletic, career in life to be playing other sports. And I wanted the boys to always play other sports. And they obviously specialized a little more because they were with me playing baseball. And so they were at the field all the time. And a lot of times in the fall, we weren't making it back to our off-season home in time for them to play football in a way that really developed a passion for it. And so they played basketball and baseball mostly growing up. But too much to my sadness, because Ethan can really throw a football. Like, I'm just like, wow. I mean, it's like big time, but he just never played much as a kid. And so that's what I would say. Like I said, I played all three, loved all three, still watch with a passion all three, and actually had a chance to play. I actually signed a football scholarship at Oklahoma State to play both sports. And a lot of people thought I was a better football player than I was a baseball player. But my passion was always baseball. And I think I tell the kids, like, if you have a passion to practice, then you have a chance. And I always had a passion to practice baseball. I love the sort of behind the scenes work and the day-to-day grind of trying to figure out how to hit and the competition of hitting. And that was my passion, which ultimately, allowed me to go on to have a professional career in it. But so I'm all for playing multiple sports.
So I read were you an All-American in football and in baseball in high school?
Yeah, like I said, I think I was the Gatorade Player of the Year in both baseball and football my senior year, and like I said, a lot of people thought I was a better football player than I was a baseball player.
So were you an All-American in football and baseball?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, So I'm a high school athletic director now in Gwinnett County, and Jeff he played in Gwinnett. So like I hear about Jeff all the time. Everybody, he was a better football player than he was a baseball player. So I wasn't taking a shot at you. I thought there was a possibility.
I will ask this question because, like, I committed to go to Clemson to play football, but for me, baseball, you commit, you do whatever. But in my mind, I always knew that I wanted to sign and go play baseball. Was that kind of where you were at? Did you really want to go play baseball?
Yeah. I think as a kid, you're like, that's my dream. And then it gets close. And like, I had people like, it's crazy in Oklahoma. It's a big football state. In Oklahoma, we live in Oklahoma State is a college town, probably a lot like Clemson. But I would come back here literally in the major leagues, and people would be like, hey, are you coming back to play football? Like, really good football. I'd be like, I'm doing pretty well. Like, I'm actually in the major leagues. Like, I'm not, at least not this year. I'm not. I'm doing pretty well in baseball. Like, and so we moved back here when I retired at 38 years old. And there was people here that were like, hey, I think, you still have eligibility. I think you could play quarterback in Oklahoma State. I was like, I'm 38. Like, if the first time somebody tackles me, I'm going to walk out and be like, I want no part of that. Like, what are you talking? Like, that's how, like, the people in Stillwater sort of viewed me as more of like a football quarterback. Like, he's going to come to Oklahoma State and be like our first, at that point, 5-star, whatever it was, just people really thought that. And so, I still, have to tell people, like, yeah, I'm retired. I had a good baseball career. Like, the days of me being the quarterback are not going to happen. Like, despite, now I'm almost 45. So hopefully they've gotten over it.
Are they as excited about your pickleball career as they were your football career? I mean, are they seeing kind of the potential there maybe?
Doesn't seem like it.
Hey, if there's a coach that could find a way to protect you, though, I think Coach Gundy would find a way to wall you back there and let you throw it everywhere.
Yeah, I could actually, at this point, I could pay offensive tackles to come in. I could actually pay my own offensive line.
NILs, yeah.
So how did y'all meet? Like, where did y'all meet in Stillwater?
Yeah, I went to Oklahoma State. I was in a sorority, and a friend set us up on a blind date. So they were mutual friends of ours. And so Matt was friends with Jennifer and Trey, and they thought we would be a good fit. So they set us up on a blind date.
She blew me off a couple times, so I had to hang in there. Eventually, we got on the date, and so we went to a movie, and then the rest was history. We've been together ever since that night.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to you guys, the podcast you guys had, Table 40, and it's been great, and I mean, really, really amazing. And like I said, we were kind of intimidated here because you guys are veteran podcasters. But where did the name come from? Where did Table 40 come from?
Well, we're really involved with a ministry called PAO, and then during COVID, they asked if we would start this podcast just because there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to gather like we were, because it's a conference. There's a lot of conferences within PAO. And so anyway, so we said yes to it. And as you're thinking about a name, you kind of want the name to represent, who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And the table part of it, the thing that I miss most about Matt's career, that I love most about Matt's career, is just the opportunity to gather with people, honestly, from just all over the place. That's the beautiful thing about baseball is teams are full of guys and women that come from all kinds of different stories and different backgrounds and experiences. And Matt and I are the kind of people that doors are always open. We want you to come meet with us and hang out. So that was the table idea. And then 40 comes from Psalm 40. And Psalm 40, just to summarize it, is you pulled me from this pit. You set me on a firm foundation, and you gave me a new song to sing, talking about Jesus, reaching down, and our salvation stories are all the same. I mean, we can't save ourselves. We need Jesus for that. And so Jesus pulls us from the mess of our lives and sets us on a firm foundation, and then gives us a story to tell. And so that's why we called it Table 40, is we wanted an opportunity for people to share their stories. And so, and ultimately, we wanted them to talk a little bit about their story with Jesus.
Well, it was, I mean, gosh, you had a lot of great guests, but I tell you, one of the episodes I listened to, I mean, I think it was 2021, you just kind of talked about your marriage. And I've been married for 32 years, and, you were very transparent about, especially when you're young and you're immature and you're selfish and you don't really understand about being a partner. And then I think like one of y'all gave some great advice just about finding an older couple, and to kind of mentor you, and and that's what you guys are doing now, it sounds like, too, as well, right?
That's the great part about getting older, is so that you can share the good and the bad with people that are younger than you.
It's definitely not the hip pain.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, speaking of getting older, me and Katie have 4 kids. We're a little bit behind, 11, 8, 5, and 3, and we're kind of just getting into this journey with our kids with sports. And I think a lot of families that are listening to this, parents, feel that. So how did y'all make it a priority to make sure you kept family time? Obviously, like you said, you're traveling, you're going, you just told us your schedule this summer, but to make sure that you still had plenty of time to grow as a family and grow as a marriage.
I think, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
I don't think you did.
Yeah, I would. It's important to have a couple non-negotiables, and especially as as your kids are starting to get into sports, I think it's real important to come together as a husband and wife and say, look, this one here, this is a non-negotiable for our family. And during Matt's career, I just remember being really young. Like we were 24 or I was 24, he was 23 when he started his big league career, and just looking around and watching some of the marriages that were really healthy and the ones that weren't so healthy. And what the ones that were healthy had in common is the wife made the sacrifice to be with her husband. And I was like, that's a non-negotiable for me. Like, I'll figure it out, but this is what we're going to do. My family is going to be with Matt. And if he, and we'll just figure it out from there. We'll see how it shakes out. But that's what we're going to do as like Team Holiday. And that's what we did when he retired, and with the sports and with all the things. Like, the little kids know that, hey, Jackson has a tournament here. We're going here together. We'll figure out something fun to do, and Ethan to hear, this is what we're going to do. We're going together. And so that's just kind of been a non-negotiable for us. And the little kids, I mean, it's all about how you present a circumstance to your kids. And at the end of the day, they find security and joy with being with Matt and I. And we would just tell them, like, hey, this is what we're doing. And, so, and everywhere we've gone, we've done something fun, And so, I mean, we figure it out, but we travel as a little team. And, and I think hopefully those will be good memories down the line. If not, we'll push some money for counseling or something, but that's how we decided to do it with family. And honestly, I'm so grateful, because it makes even the stuff that Jackson's doing or Ethan's doing, it makes it that much sweeter, because they were very much a part of it. And so it wasn't like they were out doing their thing and the other kids were, with somebody, away from them. Like, they're invested. And so they're invested in what Jackson's doing, what Ethan's doing. And the big boys are invested in what Reed and Grayson are doing. And so, anyway, I'm grateful that we made that decision, even though there have been times it would have been a lot easier just to hang out at home.
So this is not a trick question, I promise you, but it's like a question we get so much from our audience. How do y'all navigate Sundays? I mean, it's like so many people ask us, like, as Christians, and we know we want to make church a priority, but the reality of the travel world or the club world is these tournaments take place on Sundays. So, and again, like I said, this is not, it's a judgment-free zone. This is not, because we deal with it as well. I mean, Jeff and I talk about it all the time. So how do y'all deal with that?
Yeah, I think, at least for me, like, obviously Sunday is the day that most people go to church, but I feel like a healthy relationship with Jesus and a healthy relationship with our family, trying to teach Jesus to our kids, is more of an everyday. Mm-hmm. And it can't be limited to Sundays sometimes in the lifestyle that we live. Obviously, in a perfect world, you could find a great church no matter where you are and go to church and have the kids have a good message. That's just not realistic all the time. And so with all the access that you have to video, like sometimes we watch, Ben Stewart or some of our favorite pastors that we've become friends with, we pop that on, we plop the kids down on the couch. That's our church for the Sunday. Or, we listen to podcasts, or, when we're driving from Atlanta to Raleigh, or we're going from different places. I think as our job as parents is to help our kids know Jesus better. And that's not always going to be on Sunday or Wednesday. And so that could be any day or every day. And I think in a healthy relationship, that they see us pursuing our relationship with Jesus and how do you grow as a Christian. And then that's our job, I think, as parents, is to teach our kids that, like, there's spiritual disciplines and there's ways to know God and so it's not been perfect. We haven't nailed this, but I think that's been the thing for us and all the travel. And as you know, Jeff, and you don't get a chance when you're playing baseball, like, you play every Sunday. So there's no really chance to take your kids to church. And so it becomes chapel. It becomes, that's your community, and your sort of your church becomes the people you're around on Sunday that also share their relationship with Jesus. And so that could look 100 different ways for travel teams. You get together in the lobby and do a devotional with the kids, or I just think that can, I don't think that God is like, hey, you didn't come to church today. Like that's not the Bible. That's not the gospel. I think it's more about our hearts, right? And what place is Jesus? Where does he sit in our priorities on Sunday, any day, every day?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, we get creative. I mean, when we're in Atlanta, we go to Passion City. I mean, I mean, if it works out, like we are looking ahead. And so
we'll try to make it work. But like you said, when the kids have a game, a doubleheader, 11-4, I mean, really, there's not much you can do.
Yeah. I mean, you orient your life towards the things that you value. And so, and if it works on Sunday, we go. But we also understand what the Bible talks about, and there's freedom in Christ. And our relationship with Jesus, like he said, is every single day. And so, I mean, if it works, we're so fired up, and we can go and love being there. We love going to church, but there are times it just doesn't work. And
it's so funny because we talk about it because our parents never really had to deal with that because nobody played on Sunday before 12. Like no matter if it was a travel tournament, and obviously that's changed, but I love that answer. I love that. Matt, one thing I really respect about you is we talk a lot on the show. David Pollock, different guys that have come on said, if your kid's passion is not greater than your passion for what they're doing, it never is going to end well. And one thing that I've loved is with Jackson, I'm sure Ethan's going to be the same way. You've kind of just stayed in the back and let them kind of have their moment, have their thing. Is that something your parents kind of instilled in you, or is that just kind of what you're being able to do for your kids?
To me, I think that it's more about like the experience that I've had playing baseball and knowing how hard it is, and knowing like it can be tempting to find your value in your performance and your career and your life. And I think the one thing we've seen enough of as players, both of us have played a long time. You see the guys that the baseball consumes them and literally consumes them, like literally eats their, and so I never wanted to add any more like pressure or, I never wanted to put anything on them that was heavy. And so for me, like I always told them like, oh, hey, I'll practice with you as much as you want to practice. Like I'm never going to make you go hit or make you go practice. And so I think through trial and error and through life experience, I've always just wanted it to be, their idea and their career. And I wanted them to know that I'm there to help them and obviously coach them in a lot of different ways. But one of the joys for me of parenting is figuring out the differences, particularly in the two older boys, because they're further along in their careers, is figuring out how they like to be coached, how they like to be, when do I be dad? When do I be coach? And how do I make that healthy? And how do I make, how do they like for me to try to mesh the two together? And they're very different. Jackson is a very matter of fact. And if you see something, I want you to say something. And we have very just kind of unemotional conversations about mechanics or baseball or what he should have done or didn't do. And then Ethan is a little more emotional. So I have to pick my spots and let him sort of come to me first. And then how I present something to him that might be helpful is more like a suggestion than a matter of fact. And so just trying to learn the differences and how they like to learn and how they like to be fathered has been a challenge, but also a lot of fun of trying to figure out, how to do that. So that when they call after the bad game or a good game, they call me and it's not about, I'm not breaking down their at bats. I give them space if they want to talk about it, but at the same time, like, hey, I'm more curious about other stuff that's going on and creating a father-son relationship that when they're done baseball, they know that it's not how much, I don't love them based upon their performance. And that's been something that has been very important for me to show them that, I love that you did great, and it's much more fun to watch. We talked about this. When you hit home runs, it's way less stressful. But I think that's the thing is that I love them unconditionally. And so that's my message to them is I'm here to help, happy to help, but I'm also happy to be quiet and sit and say nothing and talk about Jackson's dog and Ethan's girlfriend and, where he ate in Panama the night before. I'm happy to do, all those things, but it's a balancing act, I think, for me and trying to figure out how to do that.
I think one of the cool things was I did a Yankees-Orioles game earlier this year, and I think I'd missed by a week or two when Jackson got sent down. And I was just asking Brandon Hyde about it. And I love his answer because he said he had called you, and he told me, he's like, Matt was awesome. Said, like, well, it's time to go to work. And, it's time to figure out what you need to do. So before we kind of get to draft day, I kind of want to go the other way. It's one of your greatest days of your kid's life, right? When you get called up to the big leagues. I know they showed a picture, all you together. And then fast forward 3 weeks later, he felt like he probably couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. And you're sitting here. So Leslee, I want to ask you first, what was it like watching your son go from here to here?
It was tough. And so it was tough it's really hard to describe it honestly, because there was a piece that I had about him, I knew at the end of the day, he's resilient. I know because of what I know about the word of God that I'm not the author and the perfecter of his story. The Lord is. I know that adversity is a life requirement and every one of us are going to experience it in some way, shape, or form. I know that God reigns above it all. And so there are things that I know to be true. And then, but you're watching this little guy that you love, you guys are parents, you can't really articulate how you love your kid. And so watching him experience, failure or just, it was very difficult. And so, that's all there is to it, is that it's just very hard to watch.
And Matt, from a dad's perspective, right, and a guy that played baseball forever, what were those conversations at first like with Jackson?
Yeah, I think that like I talked about, there's a fine line between hey, the mechanics are a little off, you're drifting forward, and just trying to help him both, one, mechanically, and then two, his brain, and then trying to figure out how to help him navigate the major leagues for the first time with all this attention. Obviously, the high of getting called up, and we were so excited, and we were here, and he's very even keel, and so even his conversation with us is hey, I'm going up tomorrow to Boston, and so it's wait, what? Just he handles things in such an he just isn't overly emotional about anything, and so. Even when he was struggling, I always felt like he was on the verge of breaking out. He's just one swing away, as one swing away of oh, there it is. And then being fine. And honestly, I think, look, they're, as an organization, they're trying to figure out when the right time to be okay, it's time to go back down, or, we need to, from what we see, he needs to go make adjustments. In my mind, he was close and, was probably about to, in my mind, maybe I'm biased, obviously, but I could see him, his mannerisms and his smile and his confidence was coming back. But they made the decision, and he went back down, and there's a few little things that I thought he should have, whatever, we can get into the mechanics of it, but it's hard to watch your son who's very passionate, knows he loves the game, and has all the skills and the ability to be a great player. And it's just kind of that snowball where 1-0, he's getting a call, it's a borderline pitch, probably a ball, it's a strike. And he's fouling off the good pitches to hit. He's getting in bad counts. And so you're watching this, and, it's ooh, foul ball straight back. And then the next guy makes a nasty pitch. And then it just was one of those things. He gets a line drive right at somebody. Yeah, he just misses the ball. A guy catches it at the wall. So good swings, but on paper, it's another over. And it's it just kind of builds on itself. And as a dad, you're oh, you just get a twofer, just something to build on to the next day. And he just, like I said, just balls that could have been called balls were called strikes. And so in baseball that can happen, and it just kind of snowballed on him. And so it's hard to watch as a parent, but like she said, like we trust that, he's so emotionally, for a 20-year-old, like just very, very strong emotionally, always has been, very competitive, like quietly, very, very competitive. And it burns inside of him when he doesn't do well. Like it bothers him. And so I knew that he would be fine, but it is hard to watch.
It's funny because you're talking about your son in his major league debut and the pressure and the feelings that you guys feel, but like there's millions of parents out there that are feeling the same thing with their kid playing little league, their kid playing high school or travel, because they're saying the same thing. He or she's getting in this bad counts and getting some bad, some bad luck on the calls and things like that. So thanks for sharing that though. Because so many people are going through it, maybe not obviously at the level you guys are going through it at, but just in their own, with their perspective they have. The one thing, and I know all your kids probably sharing this, but the one thing that seems obvious about Jackson is his humility. What do you guys, like, what was something that you guys focused on, or some things you focused on, knowing that he had this ability, had this talent, but to have him have that kind of humility and that humbleness of just how he carries himself? I know a lot has to do with his faith, I'm sure, but what did you guys as parents really focus on as he was growing up, and your other kids as well?
I think if we're going to pattern our life after Jesus, we have to see people and we have to love people. And I think as when they were, from the time they were little, it was just really, I would take them to the games and I'm like, hey, be a light, be a leader, and see people and love people. And we talked about that a lot. And I think the kids they love being on teams and they love getting to know their teammates and their coaches and all of that stuff. It's like they take the time to be present where they are and to really start to, I don't know, I think that builds some sort of like, I'm like everybody else. And then ultimately that's what humility is to realize that you're not above someone, you're with them in it. And I think that just time and consistency and all of that, where the kids just knew that they were one of the guys, whether they were playing for the St. Louis Tide, the St. Louis Tigers, or, the Baltimore Orioles. Like, I think that I think humility is fascinating because, humility is a characteristic that also requires a lot of confidence in your identity and who you are as a man. And so, because I don't know, I think that that's, something that people don't talk about a lot. And so I think that it's more natural to be humble when when who you are. And I don't know, I think that as I've reflected back on the life of Jackson and Ethan and Grayson and Reed, I think that one thing that has been really important to our family is that they walk into a room and they understand that they're just with the people in the room, and they're going to see the people in the room, and they're going to try really hard to love the people in the room. And I think over time, maybe that is what helps create more of a humble spirit,
I think too, I think that, particularly Jackson and Ethan too, is they were able to witness in my career, being with me. And that was always sort of something that was very important to me, is to have them with me. They saw, I think both, they saw guys, that I played with who were very humble and very, team oriented. And then they saw the other side. And I think that they saw the guys that weren't about the team. And so I think that it's appealing when you see guys,
which there's quite a few in our league.
Yeah. I mean, look, they saw a lot of both. And so
Yep.
I think that, they're very observant, and being in the clubhouse and being around people and seeing things they liked and seeing things they didn't like. And I think Jackson would tell you that, particularly Jackson, because he was a little older in the clubhouse. But he saw, great men of God that were also incredibly competitive and strong and, great leaders. And then he saw great players who were not kind and didn't care about their teammates and didn't care about the clubhouse guys and didn't care about anybody but themselves. And so I think as a human, you see that it's very unappealing. And so I think that they were observant a lot of times in that way. And then I think, like, look, I always told the boys, like, I don't care if you get a hit, but you're going to play the game right. You're going to treat your teammates right. You're not going to turn your nose to the coach, and you're not going to turn your nose to the umpire, and you're going to play the game right. And I will father you in that, and I will get onto you and pull you off the field if those things are character issues. I don't care if you strike out with the bases loaded. That doesn't bother me at all. But if your character, I will father, and we will pull you off the field and embarrass you.
Well, and I think sports are so valuable in that way, you know, and I mean, whether your kid plays in the big leagues or not, I mean, I think just having your kids in a competitive environment and having to be accountable to their teammates and accountable to authority, I think more than as a coach, like a coach in a position of authority, I think is really, really valuable for our kids and for them to understand like this interaction with other people. And, you know, and I don't know, I that's what I love so much about the opportunity for our kids to play sports is that it does help shape character. No doubt about it.
I love that. Yeah. Finishing up here, a few more questions. I know y'all spent a great deal of time with us. Leslee, Mike, this question is for you as a mom, because I sit here and I laugh because I think of Matt like the same way I know he is when he's coaching. Like when Jackson's going through that, right, and he gets sent down, I'm sure in Matt's mind, what do we need to do to fix this? Like right away you go thinking, what do we do? So, you know, my wife gets on me all the time because she's like, exactly, I don't know when to separate dad and coach sometimes, right? And so as a mom, Jackson goes through this, is getting sent down. What were your conversations kind of like with him?
Yeah, I think my role in the boys' lives and in Grayson and Reed's life too is just an opportunity to help shape perspective. And so I remember having a conversation with him, and I just told him, I was like, hey, I want you to think about this. Like a year ago, you graduated high school. And I was like, I'm, you know, and it's just like helping him understand that this moment feels really, really, really big. And I care about your heart, and I understand that this is a dream. And, you know, when those things happen, you do think, oh man, that was it. Like, I'm never going to get a chance to try this again. Yeah. You know, I mean, you know how it is, like everything spins so fast, and you feel like the moment's so big. And I think my job, and something that I would hope that he, would say that I've done well, is just kind of like, let's calm down and let's reframe the situation and let's look at the bigger picture. And I had a lot of practice in Matt's career. Yeah, right. So it's been pretty easy with the boys, but I just think that something that I feel like the Lord's taught me during his career that I can share with Jackson's married now, so share with Chloe and share with Jackson and Ethan is, you know, it's just every now and then you just kind of you just need to settle, you need to breathe. And we need to reframe this situation and then walk confidently forward. And so I don't know. I think that I would say that during Matt's career, I being like a steady space for him in the chaos of the ups and downs of a baseball career is something that I felt like I was pretty good at during your run. So I'm trying to teach that to Jackson and Ethan and Chloe. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes this feels really big, but let's make it a little bit smaller and let's shape some perspective here. So anyway.
So Matt, we have a lot of coaches that listen in. Your dad was a coach, your brother's a coach. What advice, you know, and you've obviously dealt with and been privileged to have great coaches and probably some not so great coaches. What advice do you give to coaches out there that are like Leslie said, have the opportunity to shape these kids' lives? Like, what advice do you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing with coaches is check your motives. You know, I think that sometimes if your motive is about you and what, like, even, you know, when you start talking about colleges and pro baseball, like the best coaches I always thought they were in it for the right reasons, which was to help and to pass along and to work and to get in there and to try to make the player better. And I don't need any credit for it, and I'll take the blame for it. You know, I think that when you have coaches that have a heart of serving and don't want anything in return, those are the coaches that I think and the players know, and maybe not small kids, and this is probably to the older athlete maybe, but kids, players, they know your motives, and they see right through, sort of this self-centered coaching and so I think to be an effective coach, it's got to be from a pure place. And I think that I will be interested in what Jeff thinks, but all of my favorite coaches and best coaches were people that just wanted to help, and there wasn't anything. They weren't trying to climb the ladder. They weren't, if they got fired tomorrow, they were going to coach the same whether they needed the job or they didn't. And I think that that's something that's really important. And I think that that's and figuring out how to coach guys different ways. Like, I think that that's in the few years that I coached Oklahoma State as the volunteer coach, you get a chance to coach 40 guys. And so, we probably had 25 hitters. And so you have 25 kids that learn 25 different ways, that have 25 different swings, that have 25 different brains, and trying to find the absolutes that you think are absolute for hitting, or for me, we're talking about baseball for me for hitting. And then, okay, what are the negotiables and what are the non-negotiables? And how does this kid's brain work? And maybe what I said this time for him doesn't work for this kid. And so just learning how to coach different people different ways, and coach their brains and coach their bodies in different ways, I think is the challenge of being a good coach. So I don't know if that, but that's what I've found in my life is that, first of all, they want to know, do you care about them as a human? Do you care about them? Do you care about their life? And then secondly, like, what's your motive in trying to coach them? And that's too, when I was coaching, at OSU, like I said, and even coaching my boys, like, I care about you. I want what's best for you. This has nothing to do with me. I don't need any credit for anything that happens. And then figure out different ways that maybe you can help them better their career based on all the things that I've learned and the coaches that I've had.
I love that. Dayton Moore is one of my favorite people in baseball, man. First of all, what a godly man. But I remember you'd be like 1 for 25, and he'd come in asking about your family, asking about your kids. And just like you said, he cared about you as a person first before a baseball player. And second thing you said that I love is you have to treat each kid different. And you need to know the pulse of each kid. And like you even talked about with Jackson and Ethan, like, two different type guys, two different type, what makes them tick. I tell you all this time, like, my 11 and 8-year-old, I'm like, how are they related? Like, they could not be more different. I'm like, me and Katie all the time are like, but you have to know what it is to get them to go. Like you said, when to motivate them, when to kick them in the butt, when to encourage. I think that's what makes a great coach. And I think, like you said, having a coach that you know is in a foxhole with you, man, that's everything. If you know they got your back, you'll run through a brick wall for them. And I think that's great advice. Finishing up here, my last question, and we'll start with Matt, and then Leslee, I want you to finish, because like anything, usually the woman knows how to say it better than the husband knows how to say it. But what is your advice to parents as they're walking through this journey? And I'm not saying, look, because I know a parent's going to say, well, it's easy. Jackson's the first pick in the draft. Ethan's going to have it. But you don't know what your two youngest are going to do. You don't know what their future holds. So what is your advice to these parents as they go through this journey with their girls and boys?
Yeah, I would say, like, a little bit like what we talked about earlier. Like, it can't be about your dream. It's got to be about what your kids are passionate about, and trying to find what they're passionate about, and then, like, go all in with trying to help them pursue their passion. And so obviously it's always fun when your passions align. So like, it's way more fun for me with a Jackson and Ethan love baseball than if they love to play music instruments, because I know nothing about musical instruments. I'm not musical at all. And so if they were into music, I would be simply on the sideline doing nothing but clapping. I would have nothing to contribute. And so that it works out great. And maybe Reed and Grayson will be into things that I don't really think about cheerleading, so I don't really think about tumbling. So I'm just like, hey, like, I don't know, that's awesome. I love to come watch you flip around. That's something I could never do. So it's like, hey, find what your kid's passionate about, and then like really invest in it, and be part of it and cheer along. If you don't know anything about it, find somebody that does and have them coach them, help them. And then, like I said, it can't be like living vicariously through your kids and trying to implement your will and your love and your passion for something on them. Because if that's not their passion, ultimately, like David Pollock said, that it won't end well. And so I think that's the challenge of parenting, right? Is to find the balance of motivating and pushing your kids to be the best they can be, but also having it be unconditional love, like, and giving them space to still talk to you and not getting frustrated with them to where they don't want to talk to you about it. And having an open line of communication to where they can share their heart with you and know that they're not going to be always condemned or criticized or ridiculed or coached even. Like sometimes it's good to just listen and be like, yeah, and so, I think that's probably what I would say to that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I agree totally with everything that you said, but I think just to make it a little less words, I think
Jeez.
See, I'm an extrovert now. That's why you always take the question first.
Hey, Leslie, as my wife tells me too, that's what happens when you're not having to wake up and face Jacob deGrom and Adam Wainwright. And it's a lot easier to go through the day.
Yeah. And so I would just say something that we think is really important as a couple. And obviously our faith kind of helps shape this, is that we just want to cultivate an environment in our home where the kids live and they operate and they know that they've been approved of by mom and dad. And they're not like trying to search for and do all these things for our approval. They know they already have it. And so I think that that's just really important as parents when you're raising kids, whether they're athletes or, like you said, musicians, or our little guy Reed, honest to goodness, I think he's going to be a chef. I mean, the guy makes the biggest mess you've ever imagined in the kitchen. He's making like homemade Takis and all this stuff. And so, but I think that it's just so important for your children to know that like our love for them is not predicated on their performance or their behavior or whatever. You love them because you love them. And then out of that, they can sort of operate and explore the things that they are passionate about. But I think if we let them know very consistently, man, I love you because I love you. And you're not having to work for my approval based on this performance of sport or music or whatever it may be. I think that that's really important for kids to know. And I think that it gives them a lot of freedom.
It's funny. I listen to this and we're stealing basically God's word.
Yeah.
Basically right there. I mean, that's essentially what God's talking about Jesus.
Yeah. I love you because I love you.
Yeah. You can't.
Yeah.
There's no performance needed. And basically, we're just basically stealing the gospel of like how, okay, well, God loves us unconditionally. And so out of that, there's freedom to pursue your passions in a way that honors him. And so, I think that's something that leads obviously, I was listening to Leslie and I'm like, well, she's just quoting the Bible, which is a great place to start when it comes to pretty much anything you're into. But so I would just listen.
My parenting changed a lot, honestly, y'all, when I was reading Genesis. And I know that sounds really weird, but I was reading like after the fall and Adam and Eve, and they're like, God's kids, and they go and they hide because of their shame and all the things that they did, right? But you see it in scripture so clearly where God like walks to them and not in like anger, but just like goes to them in their place of, man, I really messed this up. And I can just kind of see him like sitting with them and discussing things. And so when I'm reading this, I'm like looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like God's this like time in father where he brings in his people and he's like, I love you. And I'm going to show you how much I love you. My son's coming later down the line, like in this whole narrative. And so I became like a time in parent where I'm just like, no, I need you guys to know that I love you because I love you because I love you. You're going to do things that embarrass your dad and I, and my gosh, they do. You're going to do things that we're not super fired up about. But at the end of the day, like I love you. And my love for you is not predicated on your performance or your behavior. And I feel like if they know that, then that's a win for our family. And, and I think if we cultivate that environment as parents, I think that we're able to see with greater clarity the things they are passionate about because it's theirs. It doesn't become Matt's passion or my passion. It becomes theirs because they know that they're operating out of complete approval from their parents before they, do anything at all. And so, I don't know, that would be my advice.
Oh, speaking of long-winded.
Yeah, I love it. But I will tell you, there's no bit.
Talk about Jesus and my kids. I can go all day long.
100% sure. And, as believers ourselves, I thank y'all for what y'all stand for with your faith, your values, the way you're raising your kids. And honestly, thank you for letting us into your lives today and being vulnerable with the kids because, I love it. There's so much good that's come out from this because, yes, you have a first pick in the draft. You have, I know Ethan's got a great, hopefully, career ahead of him, but I love what you said. The other two kids are the exact same. They're no different. They just do something else right now, and you love them, and you're going to drive that passion. I think parents need to hear that.
Thank y'all so much. This was great. Really, really great. I know you guys are busy and got to travel, but
yeah, you got to see if the O's can hold off the Yanks or run them down, man. It's going to be a great little second half.
Yeah, it's way more fun to watch baseball. Like you have the team that you really, really can root for. It's as you guys know. Obviously you have the Braves, but we're excited to watch playoff baseball. Hopefully Jackson's in the middle of it, but it's a fun time of year.
Well, I'll be there with TBS. Me and Brian Anderson will be doing that series. So if on that off day, dude, we'll do pickleball if you want.
Yeah,
I will bring it.
Bring your icy hot to rub on your hip. We can rub our hips together.
I can get loose. It might take a little bit, but I can get it loose. Yeah. But
same. We'll have some lead up prep time for each other. We can get our hips loose while we try to figure out how to play.
Well, I know it's been a busy summer and y'all are going to Tampa, but guys, thank y'all so much. This meant a lot to us, and I think it'll mean a lot to a lot of families and coaches too listening to this. So
our pleasure. Thanks for having us on.